is Catherine. Welcome to my making adventure. This is my video podcast where I like to share different projects that I've been working on, different crafty projects that I've been working on. I live in the rural Midwest with my husband and our 3 daughters. The baby is sleeping, but the other 3 people who live here are out of the house. Today is Thursday, March 6th, 2025. And you can find me on Instagram and Ravelry as my making adventure. I will have links to the project pages for my projects down below if you're interested in looking up any of the details later. Okay, today I am wearing my Aosta Summer top, which is a pattern by the Knit Purl Girl. I knit this over like a year and a half ago. Oh my goodness. Out of Hobby Lobby Yarn Bee Bambootiful yarn, and they're pink. There are like 5 different colors of this yarn, and I think it's called Rose. I have not worn it much because it did stretch out at the neck a lot, but I just put some elastic through it and tightened it like a lot more than I thought would look good, and I think it looks fine. So it might be more wearable for me. I made it probably too long as well, worried about it being too short. But it kind of stretched and grew. It's pretty long. But, ta-da! I do have a project page for this that will be down below. I don't love the way, like the yarn is washable and dryable, but I do feel like it looks worn. Like it looks, I don't know, like not pilly because it's bamboo and cotton, I think, but fuzzy almost, which makes it look well worn after only a couple wears. I knit one of my daughters the petite souffle out of this yarn too, and I just have the same feeling, like it almost looks like dingy and worn after 1 or 2 wears. So I'm not a fan entirely of the yarn, but it is super soft, and that's a plus. I did really like this pattern though, and I hope to make another pattern from this designer, the Knit Purl Girl, sometime in the future, although I don't know that it will be this year. But the Luz sweater she just designed, she like designed it for her wedding, is absolutely gorgeous. And that's one that I have had in the back of my head being really interested in. But there's a lot of things she designs that I think are really beautiful that I would be interested in making. All right, let's transition to finished objects. My tea is too hot to drink. I just have a couple little finished objects that don't actually have project pages. And as I was getting ready this morning, I realized that I technically didn't even weave in the ends on one of them. But I did finish that dishcloth I was sharing with you last time, but I just haven't woven in the first and the last end. I did my other ends, I like wove them in as I went, and it hasn't been washed because, like, I mean, it's a dishcloth, it gets wet before you use it. So this is what it looks like. This is the size and the like drape that I like for my dishcloths. I'm using up scraps of my cotton yarn, and this yarn is from Hobie, and it's the fingering weight cotton yarn. I really like it, and I only have scraps left. So once I use up all my scraps, maybe I'll get some more. I did do like an I-cord edge, and then I just had trouble. I should be able to fix it when I weave in the end, but like when I bound off, it kind of stuck up silly. I think you can probably see that. I should be able to fix that when I weave in my ends. Andrea Mowry was just saying on her podcast that you use your tails to hide your mistakes. So to hide the imperfections of your knitting. So I will be doing that. You can see I left myself a generous tail to accommodate such needs. So once I weave in these ends, we will be using this, but I saved it for you this time, unlike last time. And then I have been crocheting some refillable Easter eggs. So this pattern is by A Crafty Concept, and I followed from her blog. So I guess I didn't check if it's available on Ravelry or anything like that, but it is available on her blog, which I should link below for you. And it is free on her blog. There are a few things I did different, but first let me talk to you about what I've been doing. I have been working on using my Cascade 220 Superwash scraps, which are really bright, fun colors, to make these little refillable Easter eggs. So I have actually 6 of them done, but I will just show you. It's really bright, so maybe this one will show best. Show you what they are. And they open up and you can stuff things inside. The pattern does call for you to turn it inside out, which means that you would seam it slightly differently. Then it would look more like this. I kind of like it with the original. I like it with where you can see the single crochet border around it. So I seamed mine slightly different so that it would be nice to leave it open, or to leave it this way. So I made one of each of those 4 colors of yarn I showed you, 2 yellows and 2 pinks so far. And I will keep working through my yarn. Each one is taking about 18 grams of this yarn. I did try some acrylic yarn, but I don't really have a lot of acrylic, so I couldn't make very many with that. And I tried some cotton yarn, but then the egg was kind of tiny and dense. And so I went to this super washable yarn that I had. It's like a little bit higher price point of yarn compared to the other 2, but it's yarn that I had in my stash. So in that way, it ends up being a cheaper project because it's yarn I already had that I didn't have a plan for. I am hoping to be able to make 12 eggs by Saturday, but I may only be able to get 8 or 10. I might not even have enough yarn for 12, so we'll see. A few of them might be multicolored. I don't want extra ends, so I don't think that I would like stripe this part necessarily, but I could do this piece in one color and this piece in a different color, and then seam them in a 3rd color or even a 4th color if I did the back a different color. I do have a few bits of navy scraps too that I might use if I do a multicolored egg. We'll see. I'm going to start with single colored eggs for this yarn, and then only if needed do a multicolored one, because there are already 6 ends to weave in on each one of those, and I don't need to spend more time weaving in ends if I can avoid it. So yeah, that's like my obsession this week, is working on those. Each one takes me probably over an hour of crocheting and weaving in ends. I did make one once where I wasn't careful enough and this front piece was like crooked. I didn't weave it in like equally I didn't seam it equally on each side, so it looked crooked, so I had to like rip it out and try again. So now I'm a little bit more cautious with my seaming step at the end, and that tends to take longer than I feel like it should. So yeah, those are my finished objects. Let me show you my works in progress. I have only a couple things, and I will be making more eggs. I feel like I don't have a ton of things to show you today, sadly. but it's been only a week and a half since I filmed, and we were out of town last weekend, so I will share a little bit more about that at the end of the video. The first work in progress I want to share with you is my Market Henley. This is a pattern by Claire Jackson. It's a fingering weight garment with a 3-button Henley at the top. It uses a waffle texture, and I think the pattern allows you to do short sleeves or long sleeves. I plan to do short sleeves, but maybe I will want long sleeves. No, I think I would prefer short sleeves, just for my own sake of wearing the garment. I know I had shown you this last time, and I don't remember. I think I had finished the back panel. Well, I have since, maybe I had started the front. Yes, I remember last time I was filming, I had started the left front, and I liked the way that it lined up at the shoulder seam. The pattern, like the stitch pattern, lines up really nicely at the shoulder seam. And when I picked up the right sleeve, it did not match nicely. And that was a good clue. If I had not noticed how nicely the left sleeve looked, or if I had done something wrong on the left sleeve, I picked up the right sleeve wrong the first time, and it didn't match up as well. And I don't know that I would have noticed if I hadn't been filming to show you previously and noticed at that point how nicely it was to look. So I've just joined under the arms. I don't know how to show you best, but like I've done one round under to join the front and back. And there are a million ends because I've been alternating skeins and changing. So there's, 2 colors in the back, 2 strands for the left front, 2 strands for the right front. And then when I'm joining in the round now, I have to like change where my yarn is starting. And it wouldn't be a problem if I wasn't alternating skeins. But yeah, I'm really excited. You can see the little V for the Henley here. I have 2 buttonholes, and the third one goes in the collar. And yeah, so I am really excited. It's so squishy and soft. I think block most of the back panel already before I picked up the front, but I have not blocked it since then. So I'll probably work a few inches in the body and then block it and put on the collar. And I might at that time also do the sleeves. But I should do several inches of the body first. Otherwise, when I come back to the body, it'll feel like a really big slog because I probably have have to knit like 13 inches under the arms for myself for a nice length of a shirt, depending on where the armholes hit me. So yeah, this is the Market Henley by pattern. Pattern is by Claire Jackson. I'm knitting the size that has a 48-inch bust. And my husband and I dyed this yarn. I did get my 3rd skein dyed up, and so I will be joining that in on the body now to make sure that I alternate through the different skeins that I have that were dyed. So this yarn was dyed at 3 separate times. So even though it's like the same color composition, it often takes to the dye differently at different times. So that is what I've got. I'm really, really, really excited to have this spring and be able to wear it. I think it will be really, really nice to be able to wear. I don't have buttons for it yet. Because it's a fingering weight garment, I feel like a wood button would be too heavy. So I want something nice and light. And I might look, because I do have some wood buttons that would probably fit and work, but I just feel like they would be too heavy for the garment. So I'll probably look for and pick up some plastic buttons at Walmart when I'm ready to be done, when I'm finishing up the project. So let me see if I have any, I don't think I have any other notes. Oh, my needle size is a US 4, 3.5 millimeter needle. That's what it took for me to meet gauge. Yeah, I'm really excited to be making progress on that. I did spend about an hour on it yesterday to get, I think I had the front panels together at that point, but to get to the point where I was working in the round, I was able to devote some time to it yesterday. We had a snow day yesterday, again. And then I have one other project that I'm currently working on, and that is a pair of socks that I'm knitting for my 5-year-old daughter. These socks are using several different yarns. So, ooh, Stripey Socks. Also, one of the yarns is Knit Felici in the colorway Lisa. I would say that's probably the main yarn. And it is a self-striping yarn. So let me show you what I've got. I cast on 48 stitches on a US 1 2.25 millimeter needle. I did 12 rounds of 2x2 rib, and then I just knit a few little repeats here. I had been thinking through striping in the black to help the Felici, like to help make sure I had enough Felici to knit her pair of socks. And that worked really well. And I really like the way that it looks with the black striped through the body of the sock. It gives a completely different vibe than my socks, which I knit with the same yarn, even though I also had black for the cuff, heels, and toe. But I was thinking I would do black like in between each color change, but then I was like, but I don't know that the color change will happen at the beginning of the round, and I don't want to have to cut my yarn every time. And I didn't want like, you know, all this purple and then a little bit of pink and then black and then the rest of the pink and a little bit of orange and then black, or do the black and then a little bit of pink before the orange starts. I didn't want to have to cut my yarn. So I decided to throw the black sort of in the middle of each color change. And I think that turned out really well. So that way I could carry my yarns through, and it ended up being for my gauge and this yarn, that I could do about 9 rounds of the Felici, and then I did 4 rounds of the black. And I put the heel in the middle of those 4 rounds. And then I went back to my 9, 4, 9, 4, 9, 4, and she picked this purple yarn for her toe. I was asking her if she wanted it to be out of the Felici, the striped color, or out of the black. And she said, well, I want it to be purple. Let me show you. And she found this ball of purple yarn that my husband dyed for me. And I knit socks for myself out of that. And that is what she wanted for her toe. So I'm on the toe. And these should be finished. This sock should be finished soon. I wound my yarn for the second sock backwards. Thank you, Eunice, for this idea. Eunice of Therapy by Craft is always showing like fraternal socks, and I thought that this would look cute for her. So I'm going to start with blue again, but then it should transition to the green first, and then the yellow and the orange and the pink and the purple, and then finish up blue. So I have like the same color sequence, but I'll work it in the backwards order and add on a purple toe again, I guess. So yeah, that is my daughter's socks. And when I'm finished, I have another daughter who wants a pair of socks as well. I'm not sure if I'll have enough Felici for her, but I might try. I don't know, I'll have to look through what I have and see. I do have some Knit Pick Stroll left over from a few years ago, and I could maybe give her like black and purple striped socks if she would go for that. But I'm not going to ask her until these are done, because, and the goal is for me to knit on these while reading, to participate in the knitting and reading, sock knitting and reading, I don't remember what the hashtag is, make along that Denise of Earth Tones Girl podcast is hosting for the spring. So I think it's March 1st. I don't know how long it goes. However, I don't know that I read very much while knitting these yet. Certainly not since March 1st, because I got to a point of these, I was knitting them in the car while we were traveling, but that wasn't March yet. I got to a point and she wasn't willing to try them on. Then she wanted me to rip them all out, but now she likes them again. So maybe for her second sock, I'll be able to knit and read. Although I will say that when I find myself to be home alone with 3 young girls, I feel like I can read and watch them, or I can knit and watch them, but doing both while taking care of them is a little bit of a trickier situation. Normally I spend some time talking about future plans, but I don't think I have anything new really to share with you there. So we will just sort of transition into life updates and the things that I've been up to since I last filmed. I have been reading. I read the book, I think I finished 2 books in the last week and a half, which is quite impressive. Maybe I was reading one of them last time I filmed. But I finished Becoming Mrs. Lewis, which is by Patti, Callahan, Henry. And I have mixed feelings. It is the story of C.S. Lewis's wife, written, you know, as like historical fiction, biographical fiction. I don't know what you would call it, because not all of the information is, like, you can't know all of that about someone else. So some things are assumed or created to fit the storyline. I don't know. I feel complicated about that story. I just sort of felt like if it had been, I would have really loved it. I feel like if it hadn't been about C.S. Lewis, which I don't know much about him to start out with, other than that he wrote Narnia and some other popular books. So it was just interesting to me to see, like, maybe a more looked more deeply into his life. But then it's hard for me to, like, suss out, like, what's really true, what's made up. And then that mixes up, you know, my feelings of it all. So, yeah, it was a good story. Like, I would have really loved it had it maybe not had the aspects of truth written through it, which I don't know if that even makes sense. Or if it had been about somebody that I didn't already have, like, some preconceived notions about. So I did feel like I guess, how will I say this? I did feel like he had some, like, strong beliefs that then were, like, challenged by his relationships. And the story, since it doesn't follow him, doesn't necessarily show him, like, grappling with God about that, but just changing his mind. And I didn't appreciate that. That is one of the things I had maybe the hardest time with. Or some things that maybe, I don't know, this isn't a theological knitting podcast. But for me, it was maybe more like my own personal beliefs that I didn't really like the way things were handled in different situations in the book. Maybe I'll leave it at that, since I can't figure out a better way to say it. And then I just finished the book just this morning, The Frozen River by Ariel Lawhon. I don't know if I said that right. I loved it. There were only a few things that I felt were, like, slightly unrealistic, but then I found out, I didn't know going in, that this was also based on a real person's life. So some of it is made up, some of it's based on reality. At the end, the author kind of shared what things she like knowingly changed and what things maybe she interpreted. I did feel that, I guess, like two things I kind of found fault with in just the sense of making it realistic. The main character's marriage is portrayed as like pretty much entirely perfect. So I'm not a fan of that romanticizing marriage in a way that becomes unrealistic for people who maybe don't have like real life examples of marriage and long-term marriage. I want like reality portrayed well, and the difficulties and the challenges and like just the things that like not everything is always going to be perfectly, perfect, I guess. And then the story is about a midwife. So some of the things that she does or advocates for, I don't even know. All of the women deliver their babies on their back. And I think for a book that takes place in the 1700s, that probably was less realistic. Now, however, I haven't actually studied that specifically. So I don't really know how realistic that is. But without epidurals, I don't know that was as common. Those are my two things. Otherwise, I loved it. I read it in like 3 days. So you should still read it too, despite those few things. Actually, it does have some intense content. So maybe look up, what did Stephanie say? How did she say it when she was talking about her book? Look up the content warnings if you are sensitive to reading about any specific things. So I didn't feel like it weighed too heavy on me as some things do. But there were parts that were definitely difficult to read. So, yeah, that's what I've been reading. We did get another bit of snow. We actually got like a blizzard, snow and wind. And it happened, it was funny because as the forecast was coming, one of my friends was like, couldn't we get a snowstorm on some other day? Every single big amount of snow we've gotten has been Tuesday night into Wednesday. And so we've had lots of school canceled on Wednesday. We've had to cancel our Wednesday night church a lot. We've got one weekend, and we had to cancel again last week, or this past week, yesterday. We didn't get like a ton of snow, but the wind gusts were like 50 to 70 miles per hour. And it was rain first and transitioned into like sleet and then snow. And it was blowing everywhere. I know some people lost parts of trees or full trees. Power was out for an extended period of time. And the linemen were trying to like restore the power in the middle of the storm with these 50 to 70 mile per hour winds and really, really cold temperatures and blizzard conditions where, I think the blizzard conditions lasted for over 12 hours, where the snow was falling and the winds were so extreme that you couldn't see. Half the snow melted already yesterday during the day, and the rest of it will probably melt today, and if not today, then tomorrow. And it's not good, since it was really icy, like it's not good playing snow. I was scooping some of it yesterday, and you'd put your shovel in under, and like a big chunk of ice would like come slide onto your shovel, and you just scoop that off the sidewalk. It was not like good for making snowballs or snowmen or anything like that. Also, we've been still working on growing our plants for our garden. My husband has started a lot of plants in our basement. It is not a heated basement, but it's underground. So the temperature is moderately controlled in that way. So it's like, usually stays like 50 to 55 degrees. So nothing's gonna freeze, but nothing super warm either. We do have heat mats to help the seeds sprout, but most of our plants are just under light, not under heat. So when we had that like time where it was really cold for a while, that was harder on the plants. They're doing a little bit better now. Most everything is looking really good. We've had to thin some things where he planted like 2 or 3 seeds per cell. And our first round of lettuce has been up potted. Now it's gonna take like the snow to melt and then get out in the garden and prep the garden because we have some row cover. And so there's some early things that we need to get in the ground. We never got our garlic in the ground last fall, so we need to get that in the ground to have any hope of any garlic this year. And we need to, we can get our lettuce out fairly soon with the row cover. And maybe even peas. I think I had planted peas at the beginning of March last year. We need to also get it tilled up. We don't normally till, but we're tilling a new area this spring. So I think in a week the ground should be thawed enough that we can do that. And then lastly, I wanted to share that last weekend, my family and I drove across the state and we went to the Shepherd's Market, which is in Iowa City, Iowa. And it's a small little fiber festival. We stayed with some family and had a great time visiting with them. It was so fun. They have, I guess, young adult daughters who came and played with our girls, and the girls had so much fun. They're coloring everybody thank you pictures, and yeah, it was just like a really nice weekend. And then the market was so fun. That was the first time I've ever been to anything like that. They had maybe 30 to 40 vendors. I'm not really sure. I didn't count. I had thought, oh, I should try to film, but I just didn't really feel confident enough to film anything for you. And I wanted to, experience as much of it as I could myself. And bringing 3 children with me meant that was like, I was trying to experience what I wanted to experience. Plus, I also needed to take care of my kids. So filming was not really a very good option. But there were vendors. I talked to vendors from Iowa, Minnesota, Illinois, Missouri. I think that was where everybody was from. I don't know that anybody came from like North or South Dakota or Nebraska. And there were people that were, so let's talk about yarn dyers, yarn, like sheep raisers, like shepherds. Like, so there was like fleece, like you could just buy unwashed fleece. It smelled so good. It smelled like a barn. And you could buy fiber, like dyed fiber or braided dyed fiber, or loose dyed fiber, undyed yarn. Like I was selling it like from his own, sheep and alpaca that just gets milled as is and not dyed. So it's like natural colors. Somebody was selling beautiful baskets. Let's see what else was there. Project bags and notions. So many fun stuff. Lots of people were spinning. I haven't been able to see anybody like spin in real life. So people were like drop spindle spinning as they were walking. And lots of people had their spinning wheels. And I asked a woman to like show me her drop spindle and how she was working it. And I almost bought one. And I was like, wait, I don't have enough time to knit everything I want to knit. I'm only going to pick up spinning when I feel like my knitting queue isn't 700 items long. I want to knit for now. Or when I feel like maybe I feel like I could really use some hand knit garments right now. I don't have very much for myself. and I really enjoy making things for me, right? So I was like, I don't really feel a need to learn a new fiber craft when my time is already well spent knitting. So I did not pick up drop spindle yet, but I'm sure sometime I will. And I took her card. She's not very local to me, but there are other fiber festivals around that she'll probably be at sometime, and she knows a gentleman who makes the drop spindles she sells. He's like her neighbor, and that kind of stuff I just love. So yeah, it was such a fun time, and I'm so glad that we got to go. And now we're looking for other opportunities to visit other fiber events. So yeah, it was a busy weekend. It did have some car knitting time. The Market Henley, because I'm alternating skeins of yarn, is a little bit harder to work on in the car. But I did do a lot on the socks in the car. And so I get to be a passenger princess when we drive anywhere. Most of the time I just get to ride along and my husband does the driving. So we had a really good time. The girls did really well in the car. They did really well at our families while we were visiting. And it is still really hard to take 3 kids away for the weekend, but I'm grateful that they do their best and they make it actually possible. So yeah, I think that's all. Thanks for joining me today. Until next time, God bless.